Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the IV&V Countdown to Mars celebration. I'm Josh Rebels, Education Outreach Specialist at the Katherine Johnson NASA Independent Verification and Validation Facility in Fairmont, West Virginia. Thank you for joining me this morning for our celebration as we all prepare for the live streaming of the Perseverance landing this afternoon at 2:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Got a lot of wonderful events planned for you this morning. I'm going to start by giving you a mission overview of the Perseverance rover, and then we're going to bring in the IV&V Mars 2020 project manager, Eric Sylvania, and we're going to interview him and learn a lot about what it was like to work on this project from the Fairmont location here in IV&V. And then we're going to wrap things up with Scratch activity. I'm going to teach you guys how to do some basic coding with Scratch, and I'm going to provide you with a challenge of surveying Jezreel Crater. And it's going to model the activity that will be happening with the actual Perseverance rover after it lands in Jezreel Crater. All right, without any further ado, let's get started. So I'm going to first talk about previous rover missions that went to Mars. So this all began back in July 1997 when Sojourner was the first wheeled robot to rove the red planet. And then in 2004, both Spirit and Opportunity, which are twin rovers, set out to explore Mars to try to find evidence of water on Mars. And so just to also think about these rovers a bit more, let's think about the size of them. The Sojourner rover was probably about the size of your microwave in your kitchen, whereas Spirit and Opportunity are probably closer to about the size of a golf cart, okay? And then Curiosity was launched landed in August of 2012. It's about the size of an SUV. And Curiosity went out to kind of find some of the same ideas behind Spirit and Opportunity, but it went with a little bit more technology and was looking for other signs that they could with that technology of water or the existence of life on the planet. And then on July 30th, 2020, Perseverance was launched, and it's approaching Mars now, and it'll be landing this afternoon at about 2:15 Eastern Time, or soon after that broadcast begins, this day on February 18th, 2021. And so we're all very anxious and anticipating a successful landing of the Perseverance rover so that it can also begin its mission of roving the red planet, searching for evidence of past microbial life in the form of fossils. And so we're all excited. I hope that you all can tune in and see how that happens. So just a little bit more background behind these the rover missions. Sojourner landed in Eris Vallis, and you can see this dark region above where it's pictured on the map. So this was what scientists believe was the site of a very vast flood that occurred, and they thought that the rushing waters, possibly coming from the North Pole and moving towards Mars's equator, would bring a lot of different types of rocks to the location, and it would be a lot easier for them to survey all the different types of Martian rocks. And so that's why they selected that location as the landing site. Now, Spirit and Opportunity, they were positioned on two different locations on the planet. Spirit landed at Jezreel Crater, and Opportunity was surveying in the Meridian Planum. And these twin rovers had that mission to search for water. And so they were equipped with cameras, and they got the first color photographs of Mars, whereas Sojourner only had black and white images and not as many. Spirit, as it was surveying Jezreel Crater, found evidence of some geothermal sites, so locations where like hot springs maybe existed millions of years ago. And Opportunity found that it was actually in a region where there was a very salty sea, and that it was along the shoreline getting some geological samples from that region. We'll take a look at one of the photos from Opportunity. You could see these blue images that almost look like blueberries, these blue round objects that almost look like blueberries here in the image. And these are actually hematite samples. And whenever we find a hematite like this on Earth, it usually forms near a water environment. And so this was really some evidence that water did at least once exist in that region. And so now we are posed with the question, of can we find any evidence that life did exist on Mars in the past? So Curiosity was sent out later with more science instruments to find microbial life that could be found in ancient water locations such as this. And so it was decided that Jezreel Crater would be the landing site for the Curiosity rover. And this was selected because of the tall mountain that was in the middle of the crater. They thought that perhaps some exposed rock layers would exist and that Curiosity could take some really great photos of the stratification of those different layers so that they could analyze past events that occurred on Mars. It also had the goal of detecting radiation levels on the surface of Mars. If we're planning to have humans venture out onto Mars, we need to know what those conditions are like for them to live on Mars while they're there. And so it was found that there's high doses of dangerous levels of radiation that are at the Martian surface. And this is likely due to its thinning atmosphere, right? A lot more of the solar radiation reaches the surface of the planet. And so that's something that's going to have to be problem solved in order to send humans to Mars in the future. Okay, so in the red box is the location of where Perseverance will be landing today. This is the Jezreel Crater region. And let's take a look at Perseverance a little bit closer and talk about some of the instruments that are on it, as well as talk about some of the goals that Perseverance has. And so there are four very simple goals here that the Perseverance rover is set out to do. And so the first one is to determine whether life ever existed on Mars. The second goal would be to characterize the climate of Mars and what the environment would be like maybe in the past to support microbial life in the region in which it's traveling. It's also going to collect some samples of the surface of Mars and the near subsurface of Mars and in order to characterize the geology of Mars, and also take really great photos of any terrain that are, things that are in the area. And so that all leads up to the fourth and final goal, and that is to prepare for human exploration in the future, to get a better understanding of that landing site and what it would be like for a manned, or human, I should say, mission on the Martian surface. All right, let's take a look at the visualization here. Here we are in the virtual lab where we're going to take a look at the science instruments on the Perseverance rover. This is a really neat visualization, and it'll show all the separate parts of the Perseverance rover. I'm going to highlight a handful of them and tell you about each of them. So we're going to start by taking a look at Mastcam-Z. So you can see outlined in blue where Mastcam-Z is in multiple locations. And this is an advanced camera system with panoramic and stereoscopic imaging capability. And it has the ability to zoom in and out to take really nice photos. The instrument can also be used to help scientists assess the mineralogy of the Martian surface and assist with the rover operations. Next is the MEDA. And just take a look around. You can see that there are some pieces here on the bottom, in the front of the rover, and then also on the top and in the inside of the rover here, and then also on this arm up front holding Mastcam. And this is a set of sensors that provide measurements of temperature, wind speed, direction, pressure, relative humidity, and dust size and shape. So it's pretty much the Martian weather station, really. And so I think that's something that I'm pretty excited to see some things come from after this lands and collects some data. Next is something else that I think is really cool, and that's MOXIE. You find MOXIE just below. Here it is. And so MOXIE is stationed within the rover here towards the center of the body. And what MOXIE is, it stands for the Mars Oxygen Experiment. It's an exploration technology investigation to produce oxygen from the Martian atmospheric carbon dioxide that's there, right? And so this is another instrument here that's basically working towards that goal number 4 of preparing for human exploration on Mars. You got to get some more oxygen available on Mars for humans once they're there. And so this is a neat experiment to see how that could be done. Next is Pixel. Let me find it from my drop-down menu. There it is. So we've got a nice station here on the front, kind of pointing out towards the left. And then also we've got components inside the rover associated with Pixel. And Pixel is the planetary instrument for X-ray lithochemistry. And so it's going to use X-ray fluorescent spectrometer here with a high resolution camera to determine the fine scale elemental composition of Martian surface materials. Pixel will provide capabilities that permit more detailed detection and analysis of chemical elements than ever before. It's also going to have ground penetrating radar with RIMFAX. You can see that's on the back side of the rover here. It's going to send some pulses of electromagnetic radiation into the ground to get a nice image of the subsurface and any geologic structures there. And then the last thing that I'll talk about is another spectrometer called Sherlock. So it's up here again on the front, on the opposite side of Pixel. And then it's also got components inside the body. And so Sherlock is going to provide a fine-scale imaging and use of UV laser to determine fine-scale mineralogy and to detect organic compounds. It's the first UV Raman spectrometer to fly to the surface of Mars, and it will provide complementary measurements with other instruments in the payload. And so you can tell there's a lot of really cool science instruments on this rover, more than any other rover that's landed on Mars before. And so that makes today's landing something that's even more important, right? All of this stuff isn't going to work unless it lands safely. So when you watch today at 2:15, I hope you help and send all of your good fortune and luck and good spirit to NASA and those that have been working on this mission as they await for it to land on Mars to kind of see what they have that they can work with. Okay, I'm going to show you a couple more videos before we bring Eric in for his interview. And so this one's going to go in depth again on some of those science instruments, but it's also going to show you more about the location that Perseverance is going to be surveying, the Jezreel Crater region. And so you can learn a lot about what possibly could come from, the use of these instruments and what it's going to be analyzing on the surface of Mars.
Mars is the closest place that we can reach with robotic exploration that we think had a really good chance of having ancient life.
The Perseverance rover will land at a location called Jezreel Crater. Jezreel Crater is a very interesting place. It's a crater that once held a lake.
There are a lot of craters on the surface of Mars that could have once hosted ancient lakes, but not every crater that we think had a lake actually preserves evidence that that lake was there.
It had an inflow channel and it had an outflow channel. That means it was filled. The crater was filled with water.
In Jezreel, we have probably one of the most beautifully preserved delta deposits on Mars in that crater.
This is a wonderful place to live for microorganisms, and it is also a wonderful place for those microorganisms to be preserved so that we can find them now so many billions of years later.
There is no other place on Mars that has the unique combination of a lake setting, a beautifully preserved delta, and the diverse mineralogy that we have in Jezreel Crater. So it's truly a special landing site.
The major goal of the Perseverance mission is to investigate astrobiology on Mars, and in particular, to address the question of whether life ever existed on Mars. The Perseverance rover starts with a design that's very similar to Curiosity, but we've added to it a whole new set of science instruments. And these science instruments were purposefully selected to help us in the search for biosignatures.
We're going to be taking microphones with us. For the first time, we're going to have that human sense on another planet.
Perseverance carries with her a grand experiment in spacefaring technology, a helicopter, the name of which is now Ingenuity.
One of the major upgrades that Perseverance has from Curiosity is that it's able to self-drive for a distance of up to 200 meters per day. As the rover is driving, it's literally building the map of the road it's driving on Mars.
Scientists for years have told us that to really unlock the secrets of Mars, we have to bring samples from Mars back to Earth.
So what Mars 2020 is going to do is to drill samples, put them in small tubes. We're going to seal it in its own individual tube. We set them on the surface to provide a target for the second two missions, which hopefully will get in development in the next several years and could potentially get the samples back to Earth by 2031.
Perseverance is a very, very profound first step in both our understanding of our place in the universe and a stepping stone towards human exploration on Mars.
So Perseverance right now is in a module drifting in space on its path towards Mars. And so inside of this landing module where the rover is securely nestled inside, we have a heat shield on one side of it, right, protecting it. And so you can see in this image, this is something that you would expect today during the landing as that module goes through the Martian atmosphere. A lot of friction will build up and generate heat, and that's why that heat shield has been designed the way that it has for this landing procedure. And so let's take a look at a clip of what to expect as it's landing today during that landing sequence. So you could just imagine all the computer programs that had to be coded for this to be successful. And so that's what Eric Sylvania and others at IV&V help out and do, is they verify and validate each line of code in these missions to make sure that they're going to work correctly whenever events like this landing happen. And so one more video here before we bring Eric in for his interview, and that is Ingenuity helicopter that is kind of like a drone that has been programmed to fly around Mars and take photos of the surface. And we're joined now by Clarissa Cottrell, NASA IV&V's Strategic Communications Office worker, who was able to bring in Eric Sylvania, the IV&V Mars 2020 Project Manager, for interview today. Thank you both for being here. Eric, I know that you're pretty excited about the celebration that we're having today. Your hard work is paying off, and all of those that you're representing today by being here. Can you tell us, how has IV&V's work impacted the Mars 2020 mission, and particularly the Perseverance rover mission?
Yeah, so it's a great question to start off with, Josh. And yeah, I'm definitely excited for the day and the activities that we have to look forward to. The landing of the rover on the surface of Mars in the afternoon, and on behalf of the entire team, the IV&V team, as well as the IV&V program, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. So to address your question more directly, there are a number of different team members that make up any given IV&V team. And on Mars 2020, we had a team of probably anywhere from 15 to 20 different people over the course of the about 6 years that we supported the Mars 2020 project. So it goes back to late 2014 when things got kicked off. And at that point, we were basically just kind of getting to know the project out at JPL, and then also starting to look at the requirements that were being defined for the mission. And then throughout the course of the Mars 2020 mission, what we did was move from the analysis of those requirements into the analysis of the design decisions, the system engineering related decisions that were being made. And then our primary focus, which is on software and the actual code that's written, consumed a good bit of the past 6 years. And so that's when we're manually looking at the actual code, the flight software, using static code analysis and other tools that we use within our program to do analysis of the code itself, and then also looking at the way that the project tests the code to make sure that it is going to function the way that's intended. So all of it goes back to the basic premise behind IV&V, which is, are you building the right software, and is the software going to do what it's supposed to do whenever it's operational? So that's our main purpose. But that took about 6 years worth of our effort, and all those people, those 15 to 20 different individuals that made up the 4 to 5 person team at any given time deserve a lot of credit for the work that they did, and the input and the feedback that they provided to the Mars 2020 project.
Wow, that leads right into the next question that I was wanting to ask you. I didn't realize that many people were working on that with IV&V. Were all of those folks located, on the work site here in Fairmont, West Virginia, or were they remotely working with you?
Yeah, so most of the people in the case of Mars 2020 were located right here in our home state of West Virginia in Fairmont, where the NASA IV&V program, which is now known as the Katherine Johnson IV&V facility, is located. We did have some individuals that tied in from different parts of the country for kind of shorter duration. One of the things that we do within the IV&V program is we really want to ensure that we have the right people with the right skill sets and the right capabilities and the right experience to provide the background and the necessary skills to do the work that we need to do for the project and for the agency. And sometimes what that means is we reach out to people that live on the West Coast in California, or possibly work at one of the other centers like Kennedy or Johnson, in Florida or Texas. And so we did have folks that were tying in from around the country, but primarily it was a group of people that saw each other Monday through Friday, every day, worked together, and other than some personnel transitions, formulated a really great team over the course of the last 6 years in our support of Mars 2020.
Yeah, do you mind talking a bit more about those people? What kind of skills and talents would we see across this team of people? And what did they do that contributed to the mission's success?
Yeah, sure. So that's a great question. And I think it's one that can be addressed at a number of different levels. So I would say the first level is, and the things that people should keep in mind, whoever's listening to this, is that no matter what your background is, you can find a home within NASA at the agency level. So NASA employs tens of thousands of people and a large number of industry partners or contractors. And those people provide the agencies support for human resources, for finances, for marketing, for scientific research, and then a lot of the stuff that gets a lot more attention, which is the technical work. So those are the people with the engineering backgrounds, the computer science, computer software backgrounds, physics, et cetera. So at an agency level, pretty much anything that you're interested in, the agency can provide you with an opportunity to use that educational background and those skills. From an IV&V perspective, and specifically talking to Mars 2020 IV&V, our team was primarily composed of people with a background in either software engineering or computer science. So the purpose of the IV&V program is to focus on safety and mission critical software. And so generally speaking, the people that have those skill sets are the people with the software engineering or computer science background. Now, in some cases, we do need expertise in a specific area of more of the traditional engineering, like mechanical engineering, thermal engineering, physics, those kind of things. But pretty much we're looking at people that have computer science or software engineering backgrounds. And what that allows us to do is to kind of take that blend of our engineering background and our software background, and within the context of the way that, in this case, JPL designed Mars 2020 and designed the Perseverance rover and the Ingenuity helicopter, understand how software plays a role in that, and then ensure that that software is doing what it's supposed to be doing, and that it's not going to do anything that it shouldn't. And we identify technical issues, we identify risks, but then most importantly, what we do is we provide statements of assurance to the project and to the agency, essentially giving those folks a more technical, but a warm fuzzy that the product that they're building and that the agency is getting, that flight software, is going to work the way it's supposed to, and it's not going to do anything that it shouldn't, because once it gets up there, essentially it's on its own on the surface of Mars. So that's our primary role, looking at that software, making sure it does what it's supposed to, it's not going to do anything it shouldn't, identifying technical issues, risks, and then providing those statements of assurance all throughout the course of that 6 years, leading up to what we call the safety and mission assurance review, which is the ultimate review where we give our go or no-go perspective in terms of proceeding to the launch.
Yeah, that sounds rather high stakes, and it sounds like you have to be very good at those things that you mentioned to put together such an amazing feat that we're going to see later today. Hopefully it works as intended, and we can start collecting measurements from the Perseverance and Ingenuity Martian robots, I guess you could say. And you know, we've got a little taste of that for viewers coming up after your interview. We're going to show you some ways that you can get started in coding and get some of those skills developed. And maybe one day you could work here at Fairmont and participate in one of these missions in this way. Eric, I've got a question for you, and then I think another question that we'll wrap up with, and maybe I'll even ask Clarissa that final question as well, pertaining to the landing later today. But I want to know, what would you want people to be thinking about if they're interested in the STEM field, if they want to work at IV&V, like what should they be thinking about now as they're getting prepared for a career?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I think my first way of answering that would be start thinking about it as early as you can in your life, and whether that means you're an elementary school student, a middle school, a high school, college, all throughout that course of your education, if you're in that phase of life, what are your interests? What is it that motivates you? What is it that excites you? And understanding that is critically important, because the reality of day-to-day work, some of it is exciting, but there's just a reality to the day-to-day kind of grind of things that you have to get done. And so if you don't have that motivation coming from somewhere else, and you don't understand your role in the much bigger picture, it can get difficult. So that's one of the joys of working for NASA, because NASA has these worldwide and universally wide missions and vision statements where we basically want to do things that are going to better humankind. And so, if you want to feel like you're part of something that is significant in the world and significant in the universe at large, NASA is a great place. The second thing I would offer is, and I think this is critically important for particularly students that are leaving high school or entering into college or in those later years of college, and that's to take advantage of the internship programs that NASA offers and that we have at our own NASA IV&V program. Those internship programs will give you that real-time, firsthand experience of what you think working in a place is really going to look like, and what working with a team is going to be like, and how to apply the things that you've learned in a classroom setting or in a group learning situation. And that's really important because it'll help you either solidify what you want to do, or it'll help you eliminate some of the things that you thought you wanted to do. So summary, get in touch with what motivates you, and then take advantage of as many opportunities as you can to get those real life work experiences.
That's great advice, Eric. And I'm glad that you mentioned it. If you haven't yet completed our guest book, in the description of this video is a link to complete the guest book. And if you want to get specific information about those internships to share with students or even just for yourself, please put a note in the guest book for me, and I will get some of that information sent to you. All right, final question, Eric. As people were watching the landing later today take place, what things should they be thinking about as they're watching that?
So I think the first thing to keep in mind is that what you're going to be watching, and then what you're going to be seeing on social media and across the World Wide Web, and it will be worldwide because this is a significant event in the history of humankind. I mean, literally. But what you need to keep in mind is that these moments that you're watching are the culmination of decades of work by many different people. And so the idea of a Mars 2020 goes back several decades to surveys that were done and inquiries that scientists wanted to make and things that they were interested in. And then that gets translated into an actual project, and then that project can take 6 to 8 years to actually get to a point where they're sitting on a launch pad. And like last July 2020, we got to watch the rocket take off with the Perseverance rover, with the Ingenuity helicopter, kind of going along for a little bit of a ride on the underbelly of the rover. And so it's a lot of work just getting to that point. But what you're going to see this afternoon is probably the most critical aspect of the phase of the mission outside of the actual science work. And that's called the entry, descent, and landing. And that's where this spacecraft is going to go from about 12,000 miles per hour, traveling that rate of speed, down to about 2 miles per hour, and then use a series of cords. Yeah, so a parachute and a series of cords to gently lower the rover to the surface of Mars. And then at that point, the rover will take a little while to kind of check itself, do some self-checks, and do some other things before it starts with the surface science work and the release of the Ingenuity helicopter. So that, during the Mars Science Lab, the MSL mission, 5 or 6 years ago, that came to be known as the 7 minutes of terror, because it's this time where you're watching billions of dollars and decades of years of work, and if it doesn't land properly, that's pretty much the end of the mission. So keep all of that in mind. Like, there's a lot riding on this, and the significance of it is huge. The Ingenuity helicopter is what's called a tech demo, so it's not part of the formal science objectives that Mars 2020 has, but like I said, it's kind of hitching a ride. But if they can get that to take off and do what it's supposed to do, which is go to about, well, there's several different landing sites over the course of about 30 days. That'll be the first time that that humans have been able to have powered flight on another planet. So that literally is history making. You're watching it. So the landing and then the helicopter, and then watching over the next months and years of the science that is done with the samples that are found by the Perseverance rover. It's a very significant thing. So enjoy it, be part of it, engage in it this afternoon, and then keep looking forward to all the scientific data and the kind of conclusions that they can find. Hopefully, the goal is to land in this place called the Jezreel Crater, which is essentially like a 28-mile wide lake where they think that they could find evidence of water. And so microbial life on another planet, that's why Mars 2020 is going there. And this afternoon is the first step in that process.
Wow, thanks, Eric, so much for calling in today and providing us with your insight for the Perseverance and the Ingenuity robotics, I guess the IV&V version of the Mars 2020 mission. Clarissa, thank you so much for bringing Eric in and making this possible. Is there anything that either of you wanted to add before we wrap up?
I would just like to say, thank you for the opportunity. I think this was a really great thing that we could do to all sort of celebrate together that this, this mission is going into such an important feat. And I think it's great that we can recognize how much work goes into something like this, as Eric has referenced throughout our talk today. And a lot of it happens right here in West Virginia. I'm a born and bred West Virginian, and growing up, I don't think I knew how much there was in this state that was an opportunity for all kinds of STEM fields and et cetera, that it contributed to NASA and NASA's groundbreaking work. So it's great to sort of highlight what we do here and what happens from talented people all over the country who are doing great work and making these missions possible. So happy to do this, and thank you for the opportunity.
Excellent. Well, thank you both so much for being here.
Yeah, and Eric, again, just to leverage what.
Oh, Eric, I think you were going to say something, but maybe you got muted.
Yeah, sure, Josh. I did just want to leverage what Clarissa, the point that she made, and a lot of people drive right by the building in Fairmont, which you can see from I-79, and it's a pink building, and some people call it the 4 and 5 because it's Roman numerals IV and V, and so it's kind of a humorous way to remember. But when you see that meatball from I-79 in Fairmont, keep in mind there are a lot of extremely talented, hardworking, diligent individuals that are working for this agency that has these huge goals, and you can be part of that. And you can also use it as a stepping stone to get into all kinds of work that the agency does all around the country and literally all around the world, with some of these launches taking place in different parts of our world. So don't set your expectations too low for yourself. Set them extremely high. Go for them, and just believe in yourself.
Excellent. Thank you, Eric, again. And thank you both. All right, so let's head now over to our little exploration here on Now, maybe you too would like to work on robotic missions with NASA in the future for space exploration. You can start preparing for that now by learning how to do some basic coding. We're going to do some drag and drop coding on Scratch to complete the Coding Perseverance challenge that I made for you. But before I show you how to get involved with that challenge, let's have a little briefing on the mission so that you know what to do when we get there. let's start with this information about Jezreel Crater and the prime mission that you're going to be programming on Scratch.
This flyover was produced from NASA images taken from orbit. The blue circle indicates the area the rover will likely land. The arcing hills in the center, about 1,600 feet high and are the rim of Jezreel Crater. The central goal of Mars 2020 is to learn whether life ever existed on Mars. It's too cold and dry for life to exist on the Martian surface today. But after Jezreel Crater formed billions of years ago, water filled it to form a deep lake, about the same size as Lake Tahoe. Eventually, as Mars' climate changed, Lake Jezreel dried up, and surface water disappeared from the planet. An ancient lake is a fantastic place to pursue our goal of looking for possible Martian life. On Earth, lakes are filled with living creatures. Evidence of that life is often preserved in the mud and sand deposited on the bottom of the lake. So, we use the rover's instruments to explore the rocks of the ancient lake bed. Here we can see evidence of the former lake. The canyon cutting through the crater rim was carved by a river. As the water entered the lake, it slowed and dropped the sand and mud it was carrying to form the fan-shaped delta. The white line is a path the rover might follow in its first 2 years, called the prime mission. During this period, we use the rover science instruments to analyze the lake sediments. After we explore the delta, we hope to investigate the shoreline of the former lake. To get there, we have to traverse around a sea of modern sand dunes. From this perspective, you can see former shorelines curving around a headland. We can picture waves in Lake Jezreel beating on a sandy beach. And finally, we will press on to the crater rim. Jezreel Crater formed when a large object collided with Mars, excavating rocks from deep in the Martian crust, exposing them in the rim for us to study. These rocks would have been hot shortly after the impact and may have hosted hot springs. Deposits from these springs would be another target in our search for possible ancient life on Mars.
Okay, and so we're going to program our rover to follow that path and collect rock samples along the way. And so let's just take one more look at how these samples are collected by the Perseverance rover. Pretty neat. Okay, so we're going to go to Scratch, and I'm going to show you the project. So again, you're going to create an account by joining Scratch. And then you're going to sign in with the login that you created. And then you're going to access this link that which is put inside of the description of the YouTube video. And then once you open this project link, you'll come to the IV&V Countdown to Mars 2020 Perseverance Code Challenge that I've created. You're going to look for an icon that has this kind of galaxy look to it. I don't have it visible because I'm the creator of this project, but when you click that icon, it may say remix, it may not. It means to remix the project. And so once you remix the project, you will get a copy of it for your own library of projects. And at that point, you can click See Inside. And you want to click See Inside so that you can add lines of code to the Martian rover sprite page so that it can complete this task of collecting the 6 rock samples in the correct order as described by the Jezreel Crater Prime mission overview that we just saw. Now, before we begin taking a look at some options that you can use to program your rover, I want to give you some do not touch areas of the code, because if you start messing with anything that is already in there, you could possibly cause it to crash and it won't work correctly. And then you'll have to start all over from the beginning program that I created in order to make it work the way that you would like. And so key tip number 1 is stay on the Perseverance rover sprite page, which is the one that's highlighted here. And you'll know that you're on that page. If you scroll up to the top here, an icon will appear. Of course, I'm used to seeing an icon. It's not there now. Maybe they've taken that out. You might see an icon here on which page you're on. You can also just check here in the window to make sure that you are on the right sprite. That's another way to verify. Okay, you do not want to touch anything else that's already pre-programmed. So all of these rock sample sprites have a program associated with each of them, and I'll show it to you now. And there's that icon that I was talking about. So this is rocks number 1 code page. And this, what this does is it causes for the rock to disappear, and it also plays a sound so that the rover, can mimic that the rover is collecting it. So if you start moving any of this around or deleting this, you're going to miss that aspect of the game. So all of the rocks have that code. There's rocks 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So as long as you stay in the Martian rover sprite page, there's the icon that I'm so familiar with. It appeared now. And only add lines of code to what exists already, you should be in good shape. So again, you don't want to change this purple line that says switch costume to move left, or the blue line that says go to X position 148, Y position -13, because I've programmed this so that anytime you start, it'll automatically appear right here in this position at the probable landing site where Perseverance will land on Jezreel Crater later today. And so just some tips if you ever mess up your code. For example, let's add in a turn. So I'm going to have the rover turn 15 degrees. All of this will happen when I press the green flag symbol. So watch the rover as I press the green flag. You'll notice that it turns to the right. And you also probably are hearing some music that I added to the background. This is just space music that perhaps the microphones on the rover are picking up. So I'll press stop. Notice when I press the green flag again, the rover is going to turn one more time, because it's kind of in the code to do this. So if you don't want that to happen and you want to refresh, pull out any lines that you've added that you want to get rid of, and you can stop and refresh and start over from the beginning, except for the one that I'm giving you the example for, which is the turn, because when you do that with the turn, it doesn't actually go back to that position. It stays in the position that the sprite was in after you did the turn, because you're actually changing like the costume a little bit. And so I haven't quite figured out yet how to correct that issue. But if you get to turning your rover and you want it to turn another direction, you just need to drag another block. This is one solution I figured out at this point, and just have it turn in the opposite direction. So I'll do it one time, and since I demoed it twice, I'll just stop and press green again, and it will go back to its original position. So that's one tricky thing that you might encounter. Okay, so we want our rover to move. So we want it to move closer to the rock sample. So I'm going to bring in the motion block here. By the way, you're only going to need the blue motion blocks or the purple look blocks. These are things that you can use to change the way that the rover is pointed, the direction that it's moving. For the look blocks, the motion blocks actually change its position on the screen from one location to another. And everything else you really don't need to do. If you want to get fancy and try to program some extra things in, you can. But to complete the challenge, the simple challenge that I've programmed for you to complete, you just need the blue motion blocks for the most part. Okay, so let's program it to move. Let's drag a move in, and it's going to move. Let's have it move 30 steps. I'll click in there and change it to 30. And then I've got to click the green flag button to make this program run. And so let's pay attention to perseverance and see what happens. Oh no, it moved, but it moved to the right 30 steps. So how do I fix that problem? Well, I could just change the direction that it moves by giving it a negative symbol in front. So if I change this to -30, it'll move in the other direction. So if I stop and refresh, see that we're now moving in the forward direction. And I'm just curious, I want to see if the move block, if I pull it out and start over, if it goes back to its original position. It does. So it's now in its original position. Or we can move it back in line and have it move -30, which is to the left. And why is that? Well, there is a coordinate system. There's X directions which move left and right, and then there's Y directions that move up and down. And so the negative X direction is to the left, the positive X direction is to the right. So after I get my rover to move forward, I could then program a turn if I want and have it turn 15 degrees. And then we can have it, let's test here. Let's see what happens if we move, let's say -30 again. What will happen? And you're just going to have to trial and error this sometimes to see if it does the thing that you want. So let's test this out. Looked okay. It didn't quite move enough. Let me remove this and start fresh. Let's see what happens piece by piece. You notice it happened really quickly. Oh, and I used that turn function again. So if I want it to rotate back to its original position, I have to run the turn in the opposite direction. I'm sure there's a way to get around that, but I haven't figured it out yet. I apologize. Okay, so let's just do this, the move forward and turn. Oh, that happened really quickly. Okay, and then let's add the forward movement again. Oh yeah, great. It does move forward there. And I actually didn't notice the rover move like up in this position. So you might have to program a weight, which is something that I said you shouldn't have to do. I guess you might have to do it if you are using the move line of code. I'm going to program a wait. I want it to wait before it does this. So that way I can see it do that step correctly. Yeah, so there we saw it happen again. And again, anytime you just want to refresh and start from the beginning, just pull the line of code out and it'll go back to its original position, and then you have to turn it again. Which I've turned it quite a bit running that code. So maybe that's a little bit too complicated for you. Maybe you don't want to run the move, turn, wait blocks. You can just drag and drop things you want to get rid of back over into where the tools are originally in the toolbox, and then you'll have a nice clean workspace again. I'm going to try something else here. Let's try the go to. Let's program it to go to a particular location. Maybe I want it to go straight up to where the rock is. I just want it to travel like this and then go right here. I need to know the position to program it to travel to. So notice whenever I moved the rover up to rock sample number 1, that coordinates of x and y change. I now have an x of +5 and a y of 92. So if I program that in, oh, not a -92, it's +92. I'm going to move this out of the way, and we're going to go back to the original position. And then I'm going to put in our go-to and see what happens. All right, so we successfully collected the rock sample, but it wasn't that realistic. I mean, it moved there at a blink of an eye. It was really quick. So let's refresh. The rock reappears. Oh, before we do anything else, let me show you how the rock disappears. So run the code again one more time. I'll move it at, oh, I didn't let it finish. That's why. I've got to wait till the sound finishes. Okay, and now if I move the rover out of the way, you can see that rock sample 1 has been collected and put into its vial by the Perseverance rover. Okay, so how do I slow this down so that it's more realistic? The rover's not going to move that fast. And even if it did, it would probably damage a lot of the science instruments on it. We could try glide. Yeah, here we go. We can glide to that position, which was 5. I think it was 92. Let's see. Yeah, I think that might be it. I'm actually going to make it 94. I want it to be a little bit higher, so that way I don't accidentally collect sample number 2 first. I got to collect these in order. Okay, refresh. And I'm not sure I want it to glide for a whole second. That's just quick. I want it to longer. I want it to glide like 5 seconds. That a whole 5 seconds will make it move slower. It'll take 5 seconds for it to glide to this position. Oh yeah, that is looking a bit more realistic. Oh no, I think I touched sample number 2 on my way to sample number 1. I did. So this isn't going to work. I'm going to have to maybe use the point in direction or use the move command to help me do this in steps rather than all at once. Or I'm going to have to use 2 glide blocks and like move up in this to this position and over to another position so I don't accidentally collect sample 2 first. Okay. And so I'm going to refresh everything back to the original. And I think that's almost everything. Other than if you do want to switch your costume and have your rover move like up, like if you wanted to move straight up to this position, so that's 145 and 88. You're going to want it to, look like it's moving that direction. So I have costumes programmed into here for each of the different directions. So move left is when the rover looks like it's pointing to the left. Move right makes the rover look like it's pointing right. Move up makes it go up, and down, of course, makes it go down. So I want to use switch costume to move up. And I might even put in a weight here just so that I am certain that nothing funky happens to the line of code. We'll put in a 1 second wait, tell it to change its costume to move up, and then we'll glide to that new position. But first, okay, so it did it. The turn was really quick, so maybe I want it to, maybe I do want to use those turn blocks so that it turns, at a gradual rate rather than all at once, but that'll help me get up out of the way from collecting sample number 2, and then I can go collect sample number 1 first. So as you can tell, there are a lot of different ways that you can go about programming this rover to complete the challenge of collecting all 6 of these rock samples in the Jezreel Crater region. I hope that you have fun with it. Please email me at jrebels@fairmontstate.edu if you need help or have questions while you're working on your challenge. And also, if you want to share with me your code, you can take some screenshots and email them to me, and I'd love to see how you completed your challenge. Couple more things here as we wrap up before we take a break, and then you guys can join back at 2:15 for the broadcast of the Perseverance landing from Mission Control. That's going to be super exciting. I'm really anxious for that. But things here that the IV&V facility does inside of the Education Resource Center, we do all kinds of coding and programming and a lot of different platforms and a lot of different competitions that you might be interested in starting a team, getting started with a team that already exists in your area to compete in one of these programs. Maybe you just want to come watch an event when we get back to doing in-person events. We'd love to have you watch. Or if you want to watch any of our live stream events that are happening virtually right now, you could do that. Or in the future, maybe you want to volunteer as a judge or as a table resetter or a field resetter or scorekeeper at one of these events. You can do all of that and get all the information for that at the one-stop website for everything that we do in West Virginia with robotics programs. And that's the West Virginia Robotics Alliance.org website. You can check out all of that. And so these are just logos of different competitions that we promote and participate in throughout the year. And so VEX Robotics is happening currently. We've got a lot of those going on. In the fall, hopefully we get back to doing some in-person first competitions. There's an online Coder Z League challenge that you can take part in. We also are starting drone competitions where you use drag and drop coding to get a drone to fly around an obstacle course. So that's going to be really fun. And then we also have an event planned in the fall for the World's Robotics Olympiad, or WRO. So super excited for all of these things, and I hope that you're interested and want to take part of them. All right, and again, at 2:15 Eastern Time, we're going to go live for Mission Control, where they're broadcasting the landing. And so you're going to have to go to the the mars.nasa.gov website to get this link to watch on YouTube. And so the link to this website is also in the video description of this YouTube video. So later today, when you want to watch at 2:15, you're going to have to join another live stream from NASA to do that. So the link will take you to this page where you can see other events that they've had virtually. And you want to scroll down to the live landing and watch on YouTube. And there's a lot of information here that you can also check out for alternative viewing methods and that might be better for you. Okay, and so make sure you tune in and see what happens as Perseverance lands. Thank you all for joining us today for the Perseverance celebration, and I hope you guys enjoyed it.